We are less than 31 hours away from baseball's trade deadline. It's tomorrow at 5 o'clock Central. And the Astros did make a move on Friday. They traded Corey Lee, one of the catching prospects that going into this year, we were thinking about, okay, who's going to win between Corey Lee and Yainer Diaz? Diaz has won in a landslide, and that doesn't mean that Corey Lee can't ever be good. But right now, Diaz is clearly the better player that helps you out right now. So they trade Corey Lee for Kendall Graveman, who, of course, they traded for a couple of years ago. Graveman left in free agency after the year, signed with the Chicago White Sox. There's some familiarity with him. His ERA is, like 3.64 or something like that. So he's not having the best year. And you're hoping, especially after on Friday where Ryan Presley is not looking like Ryan Presley of late, he is the reason that the Astros lost on Friday. You're hoping that he's going to be able to help out a back of the bullpen that just hasn't been consistent. You take a look top to bottom on this Astros roster, who, again, are just a game out of first place in the AL West. All the pitching inconsistency over the course of the year. Christian Javier, Hunter Brown, Framber Valdez, Ryan Presley, Rafael Montero, of course. It's a long list. And you're hoping that Graveman's going to add some stability to the back of the bullpen. But that's all the Astros did. The Texas Rangers went and had themselves a very, very busy weekend. Here are the things that the Texas Rangers did. First, they traded for Max Scherzer for the New York Mets. They traded one of their top prospects, Luis Angel Acuna. Good for him escaping the Rangers minor league system. Wink, wink. We all know what goes on down there. So they traded for Max Scherzer from the Mets. They also traded for Cardinals starting pitcher Jordan Montgomery on the Cardinals. He's got a 3.42 ERA on the year. His contract expires after the season, too. They also got Chris Stratton in that trade, who is a reliever with a 4.36 ERA, but supposedly he's been unlucky. And they already traded for Aroldis Chapman. So they've been really aggressive. And you could argue that the Angels are continuing to be aggressive, too. They got Lucas Giolito. They traded for a couple of players in the Colorado Rockies, Randall Grichuk and CJ Cron. I have no idea about any of those guys. Don't care either. But, hey, they're still being aggressive. So it begs the question, do the Astros need to be aggressive? And I've been pretty consistent on this. I feel like if you're Dana Brown, you take a look at what you've got in your farm system where you don't have a top 100 prospect or a top 60 prospect based off of the people who rank them, and you supposedly have a bottom 5 farm, what do you really have to give up? And how aggressive do you really want to be? I mean, really what you look at is the Astros outfielding depth at this moment in time, which is interesting to say, just given where we were at the beginning of the year. Now that Jose Altuve is back, you got Mauricio Dubon, you have Chas McCormick, who you're not trading, obviously. You have Jake Myers, you have Corey Julks. There are some guys that you could potentially trade as because you have a lot of guys right now. It's hard to play them on a regular basis, but you don't really have anything in your minor league system. So long story short, TLDR, what I'm trying to say is I still feel like the Astros should be conservative here. I don't think it's worth it to be aggressive. And I get it. You see what Texas just did in trading for Max Scherzer, in trading for Jordan Montgomery. Do those two scare you? Scherzer's name scares me. Jordan Montgomery makes the Rangers pitching staff better. Are these two guys making the Rangers pitching staff one of the best? Does it make it one of the best that you could potentially face come playoff time? I will assume that it does give them a lot of help if they're trying to hold off the Astros and win the American League West. But I don't think those moves all of a sudden turn Texas into some super juggernaut or separate them from the rest of the top teams in the American League. Tampa Bay, who you just saw, Baltimore in first place in the AL East. I don't think it does that. And I know that there are some right now who see these moves that Texas made, only a game up on the Astros in the AL West, and you're thinking, well, damn, they did something. We've got to do something too. I don't subscribe to that. I don't buy into that. But maybe you disagree. 713-780-3776 to call in, to text in as well as some other news from the trade deadline. The Blue Jays traded for Cardinals reliever Jordan Hicks. So the Cardinals are having a fire sale, essentially. And the Cubs said they won't trade Cody Bellinger, who was a name that was linked to the Astros a couple of times, I believe, by some of the people who put the rumors out there, because they've won 8 in a row. They're just 3.5 games back in the NL Central. Let's take a look at the comments here. 713-780-3776 to call in, to text in. Phil Maton did not pitch particularly well from the 713. I have more confidence in Montero than Maton right now. That is a gross overstatement. You watch your mouth.
Well, at least with Montero, he's coming in when the game's already over.
That is true, Sean.
He can't really hurt you that bad.
When he's in, that means you could go do something else.
Yeah.
I am actually now a fan of Rafael Montero. That means I don't have to watch the game anymore.
And you don't have to watch him.
Right. Exactly. Another text. This is from the 409. They added an average reliever to an average bullpen. Yeah, that's a fair way to look at Kendall Graveman. I think a couple of years ago when he was with Seattle and I was covering him, yeah, he was pitching his ass off. And the Mariners were crying when they traded him because they didn't understand that, yes, sometimes when you're a good team, you trade good players. I remember talking about that on the radio. People were acting like the sky is falling because they traded Kendall Graveman. Goes to show you that at least Mariners fans care. But I was like, relax. Jesus, guys. It's Kendall Graveman.
Yeah, have some self-respect.
He's gone at the end of the year, right? So I would agree. I would say better than an average reliever. I think he's an above average reliever, and obviously he's been here before, and maybe he feels a little bit invigorated leaving the White Sox, who have been such underachievers the last couple of years, and joining the Astros. But it's not the guy from a couple of years ago, at least statistically. More comments, twitch.tv/ESPN975. Todd the Show says the Rangers are crippling their future. Well, they've got a pretty good farm system from what I understand, but you're right. They're being very aggressive right now, and it does feel like they're like, damn it, we're tired of this. We need to win the AL West at least once.
Yeah, there's not really any need for them to throw their chips in for this year. Like, they'll probably be good next year, too, and the Astros are probably going to get a little bit worse as time goes on when you look at the young talent on both those teams. So there really isn't a reason for them to be thrown in like this.
Max Scherzer to the Rangers and also Jordan Montgomery to the Rangers. The Astros got Kendall Graveman over the weekend. We do have a couple of comments on the most interactive sports talk show in Houston. From the 832 on the text line, I've become more of a believer in not buying at this deadline. I think another starter would be nice, but don't overpay. Maybe another 3-starter and not a top name guy. Here's the issue, because there is one name that is out there that I think a lot of people are at the very least interested in, and it definitely would help pick up the workload, just given that, Jose Urquidy's been hurt, Luis Garcia's out for the year. Justin Verlander's a name that excites a lot of people. He obviously was here before. Here's the problem. If you saw what the Mets did with the Max Scherzer trade, like they got a top prospect from the Rangers. And yes, the Rangers won't have to pay all of that contract for Max Scherzer either. You're going to have to make it worth the Mets' while to trade Verlander back here. That's where it gets tricky, because I don't know that you have that top prospect that the Mets want in return.
And if on the other hand, if you do make the trade for Verlander and it costs you, let's just say it's like the Scherzer trade and it's Drew Gilbert for Max Scherzer. So now
or Gilbert for Verlander, right?
Like also, you could just sign this guy. So yes. The Mets, in order for it to make sense for the Astros, the Mets have to take on some of that salary, like they did in the Scherzer deal too, for it to make sense of, yes, we're paying for a guy we already had as late as last November, and it cost us a prospect to get him, but at least we're getting him cheaper, But right. You're still it's such a fine line to have to walk.
And I think you just don't walk on it. But we'll talk a little bit more about Verlander in just a moment. We are the most interactive sports talk show in Houston. Ryan has a thought on the Astros at the trade deadline. I'm of the belief that they should be conservative, even if Texas was aggressive, trading for both Max Scherzer and Jordan Montgomery over the weekend. Ryan, what's going on?
What's going on, Papa Top? What's going on, Sean? So what I want to know is, did Kendall Graveman, did he get teary-eyed at the press conference in the White Sox when he got sent back over to the Astros? I just want to know if he cried a little bit. That's it.
You know what? I doubt he cried about that press conference, because I know he cried during the Mariners press conference. That was such a weird moment in time. And again, I was in Seattle on the radio every day, and I remember thinking to myself, like, why is everyone acting like somebody died? Someone just got traded at the trade deadline. And again, different perhaps for Mariners fans, given that was the first time the team had a pulse in years. But, trading Kendall Graveman away as if he's Mariano Rivera. Jesus, guys, calm down. And the same thing with Graveman. He was so emotional about it. He was like, oh, man, I'm leaving this great clubhouse. It's not like he signed back with them during the offseason. He signed with the White Sox. Like, he doesn't.
Notoriously great clubhouse, the Chicago White Sox.
Now, Sean, in Graveman's defense, like, there was a moment not that long ago where people thought the White Sox were going to be good. Like, right, with Tony La Russa.
Yeah, but not in 2022. That was year 2 of Tony La Russa, where it was already kind of a disaster.
Yeah.
Also, he was only in Seattle for a year and a half.
I know.
And they
acted
like they traded a family member.
I like Graveman. I got to interview Graveman once. Like, Graveman was cool. So
yeah, cool name.
Yeah, it's a great name. I gotta go back and he has a very funny nickname, and I'm not sure if that was made aware here in Houston, but I just remembered the interview I did. He had a very, very funny nickname. Anyway, Justin Verlander is the name that we're all waiting to see potentially be moved by tomorrow's trade deadline, 5:00 Central Time. Justin Verlander was actually asked about the move. Here's what he had to say yesterday.
Like I said, I think it largely depends on how the organization views next year. I mean, I think Max is a tough sign, for trying to go back at it like happened this year. I guess I'm committed to trying to win a championship here. But if the organization decides that that's not exactly the direction that they think is best fit to go for next year and go for it again, then I would be more open to it.
He has a no trade clause, so he has to approve where he gets shipped off to. I imagine Verlander, when you see that Scherzer deal happen, is looking at the team with a side eye. And their general manager yesterday was essentially like standing up like he's Frank Drebin in a Naked Gun in front of the fireworks store. Nothing to see here. Please disperse. They're saying it's not a rebuild. They're saying it's not a fire sale. Well, if you're Verlander, how do you not see it this way? This has been a tremendous disappointment. And I give Steve Cohen a lot of credit for putting all that money into the team this past offseason. But at the same time, I mean, look at the results, If you're Verlander and you only have a couple of years left, you want to be on a contender. And here is where it gets a little bit interesting. There is another team that is interested in the services of Justin Verlander. Per report, it's the Los Angeles Dodgers. You might have remembered that the Dodgers offered Verlander a 2-year, $80 million contract. The Mets gave him 2 years and 86. I feel like the Dodgers, and I don't know their farm system off the top of my head, but the Dodgers always have just a ridiculous treasure chest of riches, it seems like, everywhere, whether it comes to their ability to pay everybody or it comes to their farm system. So maybe there's something about their farm system, I don't know, but I feel like the Dodgers are probably going to be more capable of trading for Verlander. And that would also suck. It would suck if Verlander ended up on the Dodgers. I get that the hatred between the two teams is not what it used to be. But for, I think, the majority of Astros fans, like, you hate Dodgers fans. And did anyone see that video of Nick Scherfield walking through Dodger Stadium earlier this year? Like, they're dirty, dirty people, and they might stab you in the back of a parking lot or hit you in the head with a brick. And I'm not even kidding. Like, that's things that they do. So that would suck if he were to end up on the Dodgers. That seems like that's the other possibility for Justin Verlander if he doesn't end up coming to the Astros. And I do think it would likely be too expensive for the Astros to bring him in.
Dodgers number 2 on the MLB farm system.
It's ridiculous. How do they have all this stuff? They have all the money. They have all the prospects. And it feels like it's the case every single year.
Astros, number 30.
They're 30, geez.
Yeah.
Yeah, not surprising. There are times where I wonder just how good Drew Gilbert is and if we're just like saying, well, he's the best in the Astros farm system because the Astros farm system isn't any good. Anyway.
This is where not having a first and second round pick for 2 years. That's
fair point.
This is where you feel it.
Fair point. Very fair point, Sean Mapes behind the glass. So, could Verlander still end up in Houston? Chandler Rome actually had an interesting piece in The Athletic, and I know some of you guys don't like him. I like Chandler Rome. Highlighting Jim Crane's relationship with Verlander as a reason to potentially jump in over the top of Dana Brown, who we talked about on Friday, at the very least has been told he has autonomy, and saying, hey, you got to make that deal happen. I wonder. Brown, for his part, yesterday on the flagship said that the Astros aren't looking for a starting pitcher. They're looking for help in the back end of the bullpen and a lefty bat, even with Kendall Graveman aboard. So the only wrench I think that could potentially lead to Verlander being traded to the Astros would be Jim Crane coming in at the absolute last minute. 713-780-3776 to call, to text in as well. You can join on Twitch, twitch.tv/ESPN975. Let's read a couple other comments. Eric asks, do you believe this team can win the World Series? If not, then don't trade. If you do, who cares? Another banner is worth any prospect. Why even play if you don't think you can win it all? But do you think trading Drew Gilbert's going to win it for you? Because what are you going to get in return for Drew Gilbert? Again, you're getting like Verlander or someone like that. Like, again, it's just, as Sean said a little bit ago, you're doing something that you could have already done. And I'm not saying don't make a move because you might look bad doing it, but this move is something that would make Dana Brown look bad.
If you can give up Drew Gilbert and get Justin Verlander, but only have to pay him 30 of the $43 million that he's owed, I think that crosses the plane of worth it, because when you think about the Astros championship window, it's not whenever Drew Gilbert comes up, if Drew Gilbert's any good.
I agree.
It's the here and now. It's the rest of Justin Verlander's career is the Astros window.
I'm with you there. And look, for all the World Series struggles, he helps you in the regular season. I mean, he was awesome last year, right? So, I mean, that's the big thing right now. You're trying to make sure that you win the AL West. He is there for the pennant race, not necessarily for the postseason, just because of his history.
Other than Verlander, I'm more in your boat of maybe trade for like another starter, but like a low-end rental kind of guy where you're not having to give up very much, just to have someone to soak up some of these innings. So Javier, Fromber, they're not all overworked. Maybe you go to a 6-man rotation with 6 actual like solid starters once guys get healthy, and that can at least give this group a chance. You know, you're not trying to add to this group. It's just, how can we make it easier on this crew? Also, the long term with Hunter Brown and Javier, you don't want to super tax them in 1 year. Maybe that leads to something.
That's a fair point. He is Sean Mapes behind the glass. I'm Paul Gallant. You have thoughts on what the Astros should do at the trade deadline tomorrow, 5 o'clock Central Time, 713-780-3776 to call and to text in on cue from the 409. Someone dump it on Chandler Rome. Listen, man, you got to have somebody covering the good team that's willing to be critical on a daily basis. That's why I respect the guy. You can't have everyone being a bunch of shills, pandering, show ponies and stuff, okay? We do our own bit of pandering on this show, 100%. We have jumped on the bandwagon, but you need some people to make you think and look at things through a different prism from time to time. I strongly believe that